Okay, cool. Awesome. Welcome to Pro NoCoders Office Hours, episode 205, where you can bring your bubble questions, bugs, and anything else, and we will try to work together to find a solution. As the saying goes, we don't want you to suffer alone. We'll suffer together. So we'll go ahead and take care of these questions and anything else today. We have Tanya, the head honcho. She's currently away, but she'll be back shortly. Myself, and then Thomas as our guest. And so with that said, Thomas, what are we going to be helping you out with today?
I have no questions in particular right now.
Wonderful. Okay. We just chat and talk. One of the things that I was doing, here, let me go ahead and see if we can get this to share my screen.
Cool. Should I give you both of you guys?
Yeah, so we're going to create a new page. This should be a testing page. Let's see. So now Tanya hasn't, it looks like, upgraded the responsive engine, and I'm hesitant to do so because I don't want to destroy any other projects that we have currently. But I do want to test something out. I have a member in Office Hours that's asking how to make something full view width, or view height rather. And so I was recently testing this on my non-paid Bubble account, trying to figure out why it wouldn't work. And I discovered that custom headers, you need a paid account to do that. So that's fun. So now that we're here, we have a paid account. I want to see if we can make this block the 100 view height in this case. So the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to just title this gray block. This is its ID. We're going to go to the page header, and I believe it's style height. I think this is it. And I have a reference that I can pull up to. You do this so often, it should be muscle memory, but style type, oh, it's text CSS. You're going to be, we said gray box, gray block. So we want the minimum height to be 100 view height. We want to say this is important. The reason that we're including this important tag here is because there's already other properties on this particular block. And we want it to look at just this, the most important thing. So we want it to override. And then with this alone, this should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and test it. And it is 100 view height. A little weird though, I'd have to say here. Let's see. So 100 view height important, and the reason I guess that's happening is because it's not at the very top. So if we put it at the very top, then okay, there we go. And depending on how far we zoom in or zoom out, we should be good to go there. And I do have a bigger monitor, so a couple inches bigger than average. So if it looks blurry and you can't read anything, just let me know and I'll resize it to where it needs to be resized. And I did want to actually stress this because the client wanted to know about having 100 view height assigned to a particular page on her application. And while I do think that it's a good idea to be able to have 100 view height, we're going to run into a different issue where on a mobile phone or on a tablet, the screen size is a lot different than on a computer. And if you have 100 view height, you're going to need to actually focus on your breakpoints at that. So just like it is in the responsive design engine, when it is active, it has the 1000 pixels, 700 pixels, 300 pixels, so on and so forth down here. It's important to include breakpoints. And so we'd actually add even more code here to ensure that the gray block is only 100 view height when it needs to be. Because if we were to put this on the phone right now, this gray block would be 100 view height. And if we're on a computer, it's also going to be 100 view height. And so breakpoints are going to be important. CSS breakpoints. And Bubble does this automatically, which is cool. But if we want our own control over it, this is what it starts to look like. Where we have, it's using some CSS, where we're able to declare what screen size we want the code to basically work under. So this is saying that we're looking at minimum device width of 375 and a max device width of 667. You also then have some cooler things where you can actually have like ratios and so on, or the orientation. But inside these breakpoints is where we'd enter our code. So I actually want to find a better example. I don't want to have to edit and delete a bunch of stuff. And this looks exactly what we're looking for. Okay. So we're going to do this just to make it easier to edit. So let's see, this is extra small devices, 600 and down. So we can do max height, 50 view height. And this in theory should work. And we can actually do something else where we do background color. Just so we can actually tell what breakpoint it is. See if it wants to do what we are telling it to do. That's at 50. Shoot, let's do 10, 25, 50. And we'll actually get rid of this. We shouldn't need anything greater because it's saying largest devices at a minimum. Oops. It's getting a bit messy, not gonna lie, but this should. Why is it doing that? I can't tell what's going on. Okay. There's a lot going on here, and I'm hoping that it'll work out the way it needs to. So inside our style tag, we are going to be including its GREY. Let's just change this to make it easier, seeing as I typed gray. Okay. So in theory, we have a black, yellow, blue, red. So you can see when the breakpoint changes, now also does the background color. Let's see, so we're at max 10 at 600 pixels. It should be only 10 view height, right? And it is with the background color of red. We then go to 25 view height. But does this look like a quarter? I suppose it could be a quarter. Oh, that's interesting. Anyway, at yellow, though, this is when we should be expecting absolutely a minimum of 50. So it should be taking half the screen. I wonder if the text is interfering with it. If we click on here and we look at what's going on. Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going on. We've set max height instead of min height. Cool. And now, fingers crossed, this should set, yeah, 50. Cool. And so, yay, we did it. Now you can tell, based on breakpoints, how you can actually set your HTML or your CSS rather, style-wise. Custom code, especially for height and width and so on and so forth. This is pretty important. And that is one of the things that my client was, or at least the person that I was helping out in office hours, what they were looking for. So it takes a little bit of custom code. You put it in the HTML header, you set the device with a particular ID attribute, and you just reference that. And the rest is pretty straightforward. Breakpoints can get pretty messy. And that's why I love tools like Bubble. And if anybody's familiar with Webflow, another web production application, that's what I enjoy personally, is being able to have the system do it for me automatically. But in the event that it doesn't do it for you automatically, especially on Bubble, I was experimenting. It didn't look like I was given the option of setting a minimum or maximum view width or view height. One other thing that I think is pretty cool, and it's just a little random thing. It's not super important, but you might find sometimes that you actually want to have this height respective to the width. And what's cool is that you can actually use view height and view width interchangeably. So if we go, let's see, we want this minimum height to be 75 view width. So it's going to be measuring the width of our screen and then doing 75 of that. Oops. So it's even greater. In this case, you would think that it's 100. It's taking the entirety of my width here. We can actually do 50 probably, so it's a little bit more presentable. Yeah, so if you were to take this black rectangle and turn it on its side, it is now 50% of the width. And so just a thing that I wanted to show you there. Sort of random, but hello, we've had some people join us. Ben, Nathan, how are you guys doing?
Good, thanks.
Wonderful. I seem to have lost control of my mouse. I think my mouse died.
That's always helpful.
Yeah. Sort of need that thing to maneuver. Yeah, let me. There we go. Okay, wonderful. Awesome. So yeah, I don't know if you guys had seen, we were just messing around with some custom CSS and assigning a ID to this block here and just changing, using breakpoints, the size and the color, and showing what we can do and what we can accomplish. And what's cool with the view width that I had just done is you can see this scales responsively to the actual browser. So there's a bunch of cool things that you can do with it that might require just a little bit of custom code, but yeah, just going and showing some CSS techniques. But we have you guys here. Do you have any questions for us?
No, just hanging out.
Just hanging out. Sweet.
I actually do. I'm hoping it's simpler and it's just not connected in my head, but
Okay.
I've got the data structure. I've got organizations that have buildings, and then buildings have contacts. So I've got like around 300 organizations, but then there's 1,300 buildings that all belong to one of the 300 organizations, and then I'll do the same thing with contacts to buildings. So I can import the data. That's fine. What I can't get my head in, how do I connect once I import 1,300 buildings? What step do I need to do, or what do I need to set up to run through and connect the building to the corresponding organization?
Yeah, that's a good question. For your data types for the buildings in this case, for this data that you're importing, do you have any already identifying parameters set? So like say buildings would have a field that says 1 or something, and this one would refer to the organization.
Yeah, so I'm pulling this data to get into Bubble from a third-party source. So they had a unique ID, and I use that. And then when I already imported the organization, which was the easiest step, I then exported the Bubble unique ID, and I matched those up with the I matched those up kind of, I connected, I mapped over all of the numbers. So now the 1,300 buildings, I know what the organization ID should be, which it should be connected to. So I've done that part of it. What I can't wrap my head around is how do I add those things to the list? And then in my structure, so one organization will have a list of buildings, but then each building will have just one organization. And I've built that both ways. So an organization will have a list of buildings, and then each building will have one organization. So I'm looking at it from both angles.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting concept there. I like it. Seems pretty straightforward, but I can absolutely understand how it can get a little crazy there. So my first approach, it sounds like we're going to want to do a recursive workflow to be able to assign the buildings, the organization, and then vice versa, the organization, or the buildings on the list to the organization. Do you want to? Do you have the option to share your screen with me so I can see what you're looking at?
I do. Yeah, I've kind of have. I mean, I think my import file is set up, and we can absolutely look at the project.
Yeah, let me stop sharing there, and then you'll be able to hop on, and I'll be able to take a look.
Can you see that screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so this is the organization level. So there's other fields in there, but each organization has a list of buildings, and then on the building side there's fields, but then each building has one organization.
Yep, gotcha.
So I have, let me see if I can get the see if I can change where I'm. Can you see the Excel spreadsheet now?
I cannot. No, I'm just looking at the data types.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to share the. Well, I'm not sure how to. I wanted to share the. I guess
You've got to make it share entire screen, not just share window or tab, and you should be able to show you everything.
Can you see Excel now?
Gotcha. Yeah, there we are.
So this is the columns with the green. That's just information about the building. So just a straight import would be fine there. And then the stuff in the yellow, this is the actual bubble ID for the organization that should be connected. So these are all buildings, and then this is the organization that this building should be added to, and then vice versa. So this organization will have a list of these buildings, and then each one of these buildings will have one organization.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, cool. So KSD0422 at the very top, that's the organization ID. And like you had said, inside the organization, I should have that building. And then that building then should also have that organization ID added to it.
Right. So okay. in the organization, this is a unique ID, a custom unique ID that I've built, but then I've mapped over this unique ID to the actual bubble unique ID. So this is the bubble field. This is how I'm connecting it. This truly is unique to each of the orgs, but then with this is the actual bubble ID in column B. Bravo.
Okay. And in your data types, so when you're importing this looks like this would be the building import, right?
Yes.
So you've imported all of this, and then under all of the buildings currently as the records, they do have the organization ID added currently, correct?
Say that one more time.
Yeah, so if we were to go to the data types right now and look at your buildings, we would be able to see a record where we do have the organization ID, correct?
So there is no, as of right now, there are no buildings. This I haven't imported anything yet. So there's 0 buildings. I could import all of the green columns and then have a list of 1,300 buildings. But as of right now, there's zero buildings in the database.
Okay, gotcha.
I haven't done the import yet because I wasn't sure. I just wasn't sure the steps that I should take.
Yeah, no, I get that for sure. I think though, with the way that this data is set up currently in your Excel, seeing that we have the organization ID and then the building unique ID and so on, everything, it should be a pretty straightforward import process. And I guess the question is, so, well, it's really on the back end that we're trying to add all of these lists, because if we were to set up a repeating group and then filter it, say, show me all of the buildings with the unique ID or unique organization ID, that would show up on the front end pretty easily. And so we want to take that data and we want to put it in the back end. And the best way to do that is going to be a recursive workflow. That the recursive, it's going to start off, thinking out loud sort of here. We'd start off with the buildings. All right, let me think here. Well, we'd start off looking at all the buildings, all this data, correct? Yeah. And then we would make a change to the organization based on the building organization ID. And we'd add to the organization based on that. So let's go, if you don't mind, well, actually, since you don't have any data here, let's see here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to sort of tinker around on my screen, but at least conceptually, that's how I envision it, where we would have a button that we'd click. So once we import all the data, we'd go to our front end, we'd set up a button that's going to run a workflow. And what this workflow is going to do is it's going to look at all of the items, and then it's going to make a change to the corresponding organization in this case. And it's going to add that building to that organization dependent on the building's organization ID. So it's going to look, say, if this ID equals this organization's ID, add in this case. Trying to think of any issues or errors we might encounter with that, but at least off the top of my head, that's what I would do.
So conceptually, that makes sense. So let me get back to my data. Where I keep getting stuck, and this is where maybe I'm overthinking it, but I would import the organization's unique ID, which is my unique ID. This has nothing to do with Bubble. This is just a text field. I would have that at each of the building level, and this same field is a quote custom ID for at the organization level as well. So I could match those two up. But what I'm triggering is, so I could match those two up, but what I'm not sure is how do I, since it's just a random text field that matches, how do I then say understand what this custom ID is, and then find the actual organization ID and add it to that list? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not super certain that we need the bubble ID or to reference that entirely. I think what you'll find is that when we import, so you could even break this into two separate spreadsheets, where you have one spreadsheet that has the unique ID, and then the other spreadsheet is just as it is. And so when you enter when you upload the organization unique ID, you're going to be putting that just under the organization data type. So all of those items will populate there, and that will be then your list for your organization. And then you'll import the entire list, the building list in this case, and all of these data types will be added to your records. And then what we're looking for is when we do a search, or when we're doing this workflow, we're going to be saying if this keyword, if building organization ID equals, because we're going to have to do two workflow. We're going to have to do a recursive workflow that cycles through the organization and the buildings, I'm thinking, as we are running one at a time. I've had to do something similar with a bunch of users in the past. I had to assign users to other users. And what we did is we just took, in a very similar sense, two databases, or two records rather, so the organization and the building, and then we just compared them using a keyword search. So if keyword equals this, add to this, and then the next would be a recursive workflow. So it would restart that workflow, and we would say, building -1 or building record -1, and then restart it that way. And it would probably take a little bit of time to cycle individually through everything. But that is the approach that I would take. And I do this with another application as well. It's very similar.
So let me try to use just more generic words. So
Sure,
we're
sure,
gonna
yep,
we're
yep.
gonna run through. So let's say I have 300 organizations and then 1,300 buildings. We're gonna run this workflow for each of the 300 organizations, and then each time we're running that, we're gonna go check all 1,300 organizations. So we're going to run it 300 times, and each of those times we're going to cycle through all 1,300 buildings. Is that the idea?
That is, yes.
Okay.
I'm sure there is an easier way, because in my experience, that will take a while. It takes maybe like an hour or so for.
Well, that's fine. It's not a lot of data, but that makes sense. What I was that makes sense. I mean, now that I think through it that way, I was trying to figure out, how do you do everything all at one time? But when I think of it that way, I'm going to run and I'm going to check every building to see if it matches up with the organization. If it does, we're adding it. And then when we get to the bottom of that list, then we're going to organization number 2 and doing the exact same thing.
That's exactly it. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, I do that for an application. I built a Shopify application. I have a client who has a bunch of photos every single week, and he has a very unique business. He sells political memorabilia, like buttons from like the 1800s and just really cool stuff. But every single week he has 100 to 150 new items, and you could manually upload it. You could go through and click each one and upload it on Shopify's backend. But what we did is we created this application that lets you bulk upload all of the photos. And then you click a button, and then it looks exactly in the same premise here. It goes one by one, says, hey, does this SKU match this file name? And so on and so forth. And when it matches, it removes it from its from the query, and then it continues all the way to 0. So definitely something that I'm familiar with. This will be a solution to it. Like I said, though, I'm sure there is a faster, but this is the one that I know of.
Right. So maybe I need to do the research. So that conceptually makes sense. Then the concept of recursive workflows is just another challenge for me. But I think that's researchable for me. I can work on that.
Yeah, recursive workflows are awesome. I absolutely love them. In fact, Tanya has in the vault, she has a recursive workflow walkthrough that I used. Oh goodness, it was a lifesaver.
Yeah.
But if you'd like, I'm pretty sure we can run through something right now, at least if you want me to show you how we get a recursive workflow running. Oh,
that would be great. If anybody else has any, I mean, I can step away but if anybody else has anything, but if not, that would be great. I mean, that would be a time saver for me.
I love recursive workflows. Let's have a look.
Yeah, recursive workflows are kick-ass. I love them too. Okay, so
I'll stop my screen share.
Yeah, I'll just share mine. I should just overwrite it.
Okay, perfect.
I say that I love them. I'm prefacing this before I absolutely destroy the example I'm trying to show you. So what do we want to do? I guess what we can do, I think in Tawny's example, she has dates. She has like 10 dates that auto create. So first off, we'll create a button. This will be the run button. We want this to start the workflow. Let's see. So we can go into our data types. You know what we'll do is we'll just say this is dates. And I know there's a created date already, but we'll just put it here. And this I think that'll work. Okay, so what we're gonna wanna do, we are gonna wanna schedule a backend workflow. So we go to our backend workflow and we'll say it's a new workflow. And this will be add dates. And we will create a new thing. We'll create a date. The date is going to be the current date. And this is, what did she do? She did plus days or something like that, 1 every single time it ran. I think that's probably not going to do what we want it to do, but at least for this. And then we are going to set up the same workflow. So we go to custom events, schedule API workflow. And then all we're saying is that when it creates a new date, it's just going to do it again. We're going to send it back to add date. And we want the current date for it to run right now. And what we're going to say, we want to add a conditional here. We only want this to run a certain amount of times. In this case, we only want it to produce 10 dates. So the way that we would do that is we're going to search for the dates. Count is less than 10. I guess it would be less than 11, right? Because 10 is less than 11. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking that, but that's what we're going to do here. We're going to refresh this page. We're going to go back to our testing page. We're going to open up a repeating group. Yeah, dates, data source, do a search for dates. And inside this repeating group, we will have this data show so it really should 10 times to show the exact same date. I believe that's how it's set up currently. But just to recap what we're doing before we run it. Oh, this is important. We do need this to start the workflow. So we want to send this to dates. And we'll do this now, current date time. Okay, so what we're doing is when we click this button, we're sending people to this workflow, add dates. That workflow is all the way back here and add dates. So what's going to happen is it's going to create a new date +1. So I guess this isn't really necessary. We could just do current date time. And then what it's going to end up happening is it's going to, once it creates one date, it's going to be like, okay, cool, we're done. And we're going to go to the workflow and it's going to say, hey, let's go back here and back down to dates and create another one. And it's going to run this workflow. So as long as the amount of dates is less than 11. So that should be 10. And I guess you could do less than or equal to 10. That is a way to do it. So yeah, totally I was overthinking it. So fingers crossed, now this repeating group should show us a total of 10 dates when we run it. One date here, and then it's populating. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wait a second. The total of 11 entries. Let's do less than 11. So it should look at that and be like, nope, we're not doing any more than that. Did it really just create 11 again? It's creating 1. Okay, well, I guess we'll do this. And by this logic, it should work. Okay, 10 entries. I don't think any more are coming. And so at its very basic level, this is a recursive workflow. So what it's doing, and you can have this much more complex and much more in depth where we're actually comparing multiple variables here. But very simply, we have an action and then we just want that action to repeat. And that's all we do is we send it back to the same workflow and then it will kick it out however many times. And this conditional is going to be very important. In fact, 2 things to note here is that you have your scheduled date. If you're doing something that's very data intensive, your application while you're running this is going to use a lot of capacity and it's going to get very slow. So one of the things that you can do is you can add seconds, a couple second delay. So 2 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever. And that just means each record is going to take 2 seconds for the system to go through. It does help that, at least capacity wise. But then also this conditional is going to be super important. If you don't set a conditional, your application is going to run forever, or this recursive workflow will run forever. And it can get very ugly very quickly. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the way that this works, but I will show you. So we're actually going to make this a little bit longer. We'll say 25 dates in between 2 seconds each. So we'll refresh this. We'll run it. More dates will be created. And then in the backend, in our logs, what we're able to do under scheduler, we'll actually be able to see what's happening back here. And so we have this current workflow. I did pause it right now, so nothing's being created. I paused this recursive workflow. And we're able to see here that add dates is running, this API event. If we do ever run into an issue where we forgot to set the conditional and it's just continuously running, what we'll do is we'll just go to our logs, we'll go to scheduler, we'll pause it, and then we'll be able to click cancel. And if there's anything else that's happening, such as a workflow that we pause like in the middle of, and when we unpause it, it runs through again, we would just simply click pause again, click show, and then it should show up and we'll be able to cancel it. Basically, don't be fooled. If you canceled it once, you might have to cancel it again because it could just have already started another workflow that wasn't showing up on the scheduler. But when it comes to recursive workflows, that is it. That is what it is, and those are the things that you're going to want to consider.
Got a question. So is the step 2 in your example, is that by definition, is that what is making it recursive?
Yep, that's correct.
Sending it back based on a condition, it's sending it back to start over. That's the recursiveness. Okay,
that's right. Yeah.
So question 2 in my example, or if we want to run through not just the counting of things 10 times, but we want to run through the list. What am I doing to? I know when Tanya's helped me in the past, I don't remember exactly how we've done it, but we're taking one of the lists away, or we're taking one of the items away and then going through again until the list is empty or something like that. So when I have 300 organizations, how do I go from organization 1 to 2 to 3 to 4?
Good question. So on this API workflow, we're going to add a parameter. And this parameter is going to be a list item. In this case, it's going to be the item that we're passing in. So how many users do we have? I think we have like 2 users currently. And it is a list. It is going to be an array. Let me just double check on the amount of users that we have here. Oh, we have 3. Okay, cool. So what we're going to be doing when we click this button, we now need to see this parameters here. So what are we passing through? We're going to be passing our users through, or in this case, your organizations.
Right.
Users up here. So it's going to pass those users in, 3 of them. And now what we want to do, I suppose, on the back end here, we actually want to print out the user. Ooh, goodness. And we want to differentiate between which user we're looking for. In this case, we're looking for the user's first item. That would be whichever item is at the front of the list. We are then going to be doing users minus item, users first item. So what this is we're looking at all of the users that we have, and we're going to be subtracting an item from our list. But which item are we subtracting? We are searching for the first item of that list. So we're basically just chopping off the top of the list every single time we run this workflow. Now what we can do is we can change this conditional to be user count. So it only runs when the user count is greater than 1. We'll remove this workflow, or do that. So this should run pretty quickly here. So what we're going to do, we should expect 3 date types to be created, or 3, I should say, records. That has the date time and then the user's name with that. So if everything goes according to plan here, users, I don't know if this is going to show because I don't think we'll figure it out. Go into my dates, I'll remove all of these guys. And then we'll click run. And it is paused back here. So we do have 3 records. It's not creating any more than that. It looks like the first name for this guy was admin. So one thing that we can do, yeah, let's go here. Let's change this to email. And you can see that we basically just ran through the list. We got 3 users, two of which have emails, and the third doesn't. But that is how we are going to be subtracting or removing things. We have a parameter. And so in this case, it would be organizations. And so we'll search for organizations. It's going to pass in those 300 organizations that you have. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new building inside this organization. So it wouldn't be created. It would be like make a change to and then add list. And then there would probably be there would be additional logic where we're looking for the building. Like if it, includes the organization ID, then it's going to add to it. And then it runs through and we'll say user, or in this case, building minus item, building first item. So this is going to work for one organization at a time. You're more than likely going to want to create a additional recursive workflow that works off of this. So you'll have one workflow for adding buildings to an organization, and then you have another workflow that then cycles through the organizations from organization 1 to organization 2. And the way that you'll do that is you'll create another workflow down here, another API workflow. And then after this is done, after this conditional has been satisfied, you'll then send you'll send all of this data to a new recursive workflow where the parameter will include organization. And very similar to how we set this up, where it's user minus item, user first item, what we're going to be sending is organization minus item, organization first item. So then now at the start of the second recursive workflow, we'll be looking at the second organization, which we can then have it point back to the same thing where we're looking at all the buildings, and then the buildings will go through one at a time. And if it's the same and it matches, perfect, it'll be done. And then recursively, it'll start all over again, going to the third organization.
So when we send it to the second recursive workflow, all we're doing there is just managing the organization list. And then step 2 of that recursive workflow is to run, in this case, add dates, is to send it back to that. Is that?
That's it. Yeah. At its base, that is what it is.
Okay.
Yep. And I know that recursive workflows can be a little confusing at first, but it's one of those concepts that once you get, you'll never forget it. You'll be like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense, and it'll be second nature to you. But definitely at first, it can be a little confusing. But it sounds like, yeah, what you had just said, that's exactly right.
Okay. So I think conceptually it makes sense, which means it'll only take me 15 hours to try to figure it out. But
I feel that. I definitely feel that.
It does make sense, and I can picture how how it would work through that process. So I think it's just a matter of now I just need to get in it and run that test and play with it. So
absolutely awesome. Well, I'm glad that we were able to lay that out for you.
And I don't know that I've seen. I'm sure that Tanya's sent it to me. Hi, Tanya, if you're listening. But that recursive workflow in the vault will help with the kind of the X's and O's of how all of that works.
Yes. So we have it. We have probably in the vault. We probably have some recursive stuff, but also in your member portal, there's still that old section called the looms, and the looms definitely have a couple of recursive workflow videos.
Okay. So conceptually, I know what it should happen. It's just now it's trying to make everything connect to the right way, and that's where I think those videos or looms would probably help if I get stuck. So
yeah, absolutely. And then of course you can always give us a shout.
Sure. Okay. Well, that takes care of it for me. I appreciate that. it connected like a lot of things. It just now it connects us. Now I just have to actually now figure it out. But that helps. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely. Amazing.
It's fun watching you, Cameron, do recursive workflows because that's how we first met, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Recursive workflows, I spend hours because I had this project with this crazy deadline and I had no idea. Like I basically took this project and was like, I can do it. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I was freaking out and it was insane. But then, yeah, I met Tanya and she was able to help me with the recursive workflows. And I remember late at night, we spent several hours working on it together. And eventually we crushed it. And now it's ingrained. It's one of those things it's so awesome. You won't forget it. Ben, Tanya can hear recursive workflows anywhere on the internet. Her ears perk up. That's super
it's
true.
my spidey sense is recursive workflow sense.
I love that. Recursive workflows, they're so important, especially when it comes to just about any kind of data parsing or anything like that. I use them in every single app for the most part.
Well, and it's the only thing that it's funny because in traditional coding, the idea of looping and iterating through things is very central.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And it's funny because in Bubble, they've abstracted so much stuff that it's really this thing that happens in the back-end workflows. I think they used to even allow some recursive workflows to happen on the front end, but they deprecated it and pushed it all to the back end. If I understand what someone who was working in Bubble long before I was telling me. So, because that was the conversation I think we might have had on office hours with Justin a few months ago. He was like, they used to allow for it on the front end, which would be amazing, but apparently it's too much work. Yeah.
I'm still waiting for Bubble to introduce a social login system that works. It's cool when it does, but when it doesn't.
What do you mean?
Well, one of the things that we ran into with Kelly was that like a user, if they don't have an account, they can sign in with that social login. We'll set up the user agent flow. Cool, not a problem. They'll be able to log in and it creates an account. And so you just have to pull that data from whichever API call to get their name and their email. But the issue is if they have an account already, so they've signed up with Bubble and they have their email and password, but they're logged out and they can't remember their username and password. They cannot go and click the social login button to sign in. It'll say, we can't create this account as an email already exists. And that just, it hurts my soul.
That's not, is that just for like their plugin for it works, right?
Yeah, well, that's what we used. Yeah, we used the social login. Or are you saying the LinkedIn OAuth plugin?
When I've done it with Google or whatever, I've been able to log in the user over and over again using and log out and log back in using Google.
So it works if that's how you initially signed up the user.
Oh, got it. It's like if you want to connect and OAuth them into LinkedIn after they've already signed up.
Exactly. Now there's a cool plugin called Auth0 that looks like it does fix that situation. Has 7,000 free users, I think, and before it costs money. It's 7,000 free accounts that you can connect. But I was looking into it yesterday for Kelly specifically, and it looks like a nightmare to set up. So once I get that, though, I'd love to be able to demo that on office hours, because it's going to be a huge help for anybody creating an app with users that are going to be using either a manual login or a social login.
Gotcha.
So come that day, though, I promise you, I'll show you.
I'm looking forward to that day.
Well, I also know that you wanted to look into the Sheets, the Google Sheets API too.
Yes,
that's something that
I want us to figure that one out, and then something we're working on right now. And Thomas, be on the lookout for Jordan might be wanting to join office hours, and you can see that list, and I can't. But one of the things we're doing right now is we're starting to productize implementations of things. So NoCoders is going to soon be offering a productized Stripe integration, meaning we will go into your app and implement whatever kind of integration you need with Stripe, and we'll be able to give you a flat price, and tell you how much it's going to cost and guarantee that cost and everything. So that's something like the OAuth stuff would also probably be one of those things that we'd want to do. Just because I know like Pathfix is amazing. I keep hearing from everybody. I've never actually used them, but I think there's an ongoing cost, right, Ben? Like, don't you have to pay them monthly or something?
I mean, it's like all of them, isn't it? There's a certain level that gets you free, and then yeah, there is.
Right. So like we want to do productized services where you pay us once to implement, and then if something changes with either the third party service or with Bubble and we need to go back, then you would have to pay for maintenance or something. But just pay us the one-time fee and we'll go in and we'll knock it out and we'll create all the data types and infrastructure and integrate it nicely in your app for you. So yeah, that's something we think is missing in the market.
Can you do that for APIs too? We'll set up
Yeah,
big APIs for you.
Right, exactly. Like that's why one of the reasons why I'm so excited about Bright Data, right? Because Bright Data is amazing.
Oh yeah.
And then, like now that we're familiar and we're becoming more and more familiar with how to use it to get the API stuff that you want, then like that could be a productized service. Is like you want something, let us know and we will tell you exactly how much it will cost. And then of course with there's a separate fee with Bright Data, but so Bright Data would be recurring, right? But the service of setting it up wouldn't.
Do you have to factor in the potential that the way somebody has set up their their data structure or just their app in general is not up to standards that you would consider, and now you have to try to figure out how to fix that or adjust for that?
Right. So we would take a look at how things are and where the paywalls, like for Stripe, for example, you tell us that you want a subscription service and we know the data types and things that you need in order to get a subscription service set up through an API connection, using the API connector, right? Like not a plugin with Stripe. And then we go through and we create that structure, and then we can help you like identify how to tie it into what your existing structure is. So that makes sense. So yes, to an extent, we have to take a look at the app and make sure that our productized service would work for that app, right? Or we can make the recommendations of the changes that need to happen in order for it to work. So
I think that's really smart. I think that makes it easy for people to, the self-employed startup people, is one group, but I work for an organization that has a budget for these projects and I just happen to be the middleman. But, if I knew I had to spend $500 to get part of it done, for some organizations, then that's just a cost of the startup,
exactly. Go ahead.
And I was just gonna, if I'm cheap and bootstrapping, then maybe that is too much. But for a lot of uses, they just want this part of the project done. And that's, I've come to you a lot of times. I can do most of it, but I just need this. I just need help getting this part done, and I don't really care what it costs.
Right.
So exactly. I think there's a lot of value. APIs or any of the tough spots. I think you could really make a killing on providing that service.
Yeah, like specific API stuff and specific integrations, like we're already like, Active Campaign, Airtable. Now we're working on Stripe. Bright Data, I would feel comfortable doing something around Bright Data, some stuff like that. I know Cameron is excellent with Google and Google's APIs.
As much as I hate it, yep.
Which, by the way, we were shocked. What was it? Ben, was it you? We were looking for like a weather API, and we're like, surely Google has a weather API, and then they like deprecated it. What?
Sounds like Google.
I was like, that's weird, but
I wonder.
we can still see your screen, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So it's okay. Jordan is gonna join us. But yeah, I just think that being able to tell someone exactly how much we charge for a particular thing is going to be helpful, because it's hard to plan and budget for things when you don't have that kind of like product list, right? So like if you say, I want you to build my app, if it's from scratch, I can tell you exactly how much it will cost to get to the MVP. Part of that is scoping it out down to the very last detail. But like if you come back after the app is built and say you want us to work on it, then I can't give you definite, right? Like after that initial build is over, it goes into the territory of we might bump into constraints that were built into the app previously, so we can't really say for sure how much it would cost. So, but we should be able to tell you if we've productized things out. We should be able to tell you how much it would cost to add a specific thing to your app.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because from a business standpoint, then you could also, if you don't have your own in-house team, you could also find people that are just really great at each of those portions and then bring them up to your standards. And then you're almost kind of outsourcing that project. You know, you can find somebody that's really good at the APIs or the Googles or the Stripes, and you know, which I think is another value to you. So yeah, that's a great concept.
Yep.
Like creating an agency, becoming a full-fledged agency.
No, that's what we don't want.
Yeah, I didn't say that. No, that wasn't my idea. Yeah, no. Yeah, whoever said that, weird.
Yeah, no, we're too busy for that. But and we don't want to compete in that space. That's pro NoCoders. I'm taking very few projects on right now. So like I have a little bit of capacity to take on a new project, but only building from scratch and MVP projects basically. But that's not pro NoCoders. That's co-creative apps. So.
Well, and I know you're not trying to build an agency, but you could almost become like the agency's agency, you know. So even on some of those tough spots that the smaller agencies want to be able to take on, but they even need
we have an agency tier for office hours. We haven't rolled it out yet. But yeah, we do have an agency tier for office hours and supplemental help to become like the internal tech team for an agency, basically. So, hey, Jordan.
Bubble and no code. It's new enough that because you've been doing it and other people around you have been doing it long enough, you can already become the experts of other people that are better than the new people. You know, so even though it's only been a few years since people are pushing forward, you can still have several layers of expertise, and it's not hard to become the expert for everyone. I think you're in that space, which is really cool.
Yeah, we're excited for it. We're happy to be here. Let's see. Jordan, you had a question about if anybody's been successful transferring files from Integromat to Bubble and vice versa.
Yeah. Has anyone done that?
I thought we might ask if anyone's done that. Cameron, do you have any experience with Integromat?
I have used Integromat, I think, once, and it was purely for testing purposes. What was it for? I think it was Bubble and Shopify before I decided I'm not doing that. I'm just using the Shopify API and building it inside Bubble. I wish I had more experience with it, and I do apologize that I don't.
Are you running into a particular problem? Like, is there an error being thrown?
No, I just like I've got it all set up and it's all working, but just like where you know how like files is like it's almost like a repeating group, right? Because it can take multiple files. I don't know. I couldn't get the files to take into it. Like everything else is sweet. Got like the text.
I wonder if it's a privacy thing. So like I know if you just take the file URL from a file that was uploaded into, we're talking about Bubble storage, right? Not Box or anything.
Bubble storage, yeah. But
Okay.
I think the issue is like it's almost thinking that it should be taking a repeating group. Do you know what I mean? Because like the files, you can actually upload like multiple files into the one record.
Got it.
But in Integromat, there's no option for that. It's just like one box.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so that's where I was having the issue.
And then you're sending information
I mean, I can
through Bubble?
show you next week. I just don't have my computer.
Yeah. But before that, just to get a handle on it in my head, you're sending information from Bubble to Integromat to go somewhere else, right?
I was trying to send information from somewhere else into Bubble.
Into Bubble, and and there are multiple file attachments.
So you know how we talked about sending in the emails?
Mm-hmm.
So what I was doing is I was connecting Gmail. So I was watching for new emails coming into Gmail, and it's creating a record in Bubble, and it's transferring all the data across, all the messages there, but I can't get the attachments in.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, I think this is one of those weird things with both Zapier and Integromat, that there's an issue sometimes receiving list of things. So yeah, definitely next week let's have a look at it, and then if we need to, we can have Pablo and or Eli help us with the JSON, or maybe Cameron can help, because I know that Zapier does not do JSON lists the way that Bubble reads them. So I know, like, the times that I've experienced that with Zapier trying to get things in, I had to have this intermediate step where there was like a little bit of code to process what was coming into Zapier, make it into the right kind of JSON to then send in to Bubble, which is annoying.
Okay. Because did you ever I mean, last time you looked at getting the emails into Bubble Way, did you get that up and running?
You know what? I did not, but I've just managed an app where that is up and running, and I can check with that developer. I can go into that app and kind of look at how it was implemented and learn from it. We're using Postmark for that instead of SendGrid.
Postmark. So does Postmark send the incoming emails into?
Yep,
into
into Bubble. Mm-hmm. Yep, it parses it and sends it in. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that'd be cool. Those are the attachments going into too? Or?
Yeah, that's what I need to check. I'm assuming so, because it's connecting, like it's B2B communication, so I'm assuming so. But let me just double check on that.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Well, we're going to move into the after hours section of office hours. We will be back on Monday for episode number 206. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to join us and ask any Bubble questions you want on office hours, please go sign up at pronocoders.com.